Michael Carter Jr. with Virginia State University Small Farm Outreach, as well as Carter Farms and a whole bunch of other organizations. I'm at the pleasure of being at the beautiful farm and farm home of Mr. and Mrs. Thomas and Anita Roberson, Botanical Bites and Provisions in Fredericksburg, Virginia. They provide vegetables, honey products, flowers. They do everything. And Mrs. Roberson and Mr. Roberson are both veterans and master farmers. They were the Virginia State University Small Farm Outreach Farmer of the Year in 2015. Their farm is immaculate, beautiful. We encourage everybody to come out. Without any further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Mrs. Roberson.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. This is my first webinar, and we're honored to be with you today. We're here in Fredericksburg, Virginia, in Spotsylvania County, and we are here to talk to you about growing garlic and onions. We've been farming now for about 7 years. We started back in 2013. My husband is originally from Lynchburg, Virginia, and he grew up on a farm. So his family pretty much grew everything that the family needed to survive. They had cows, pigs, chickens, and they grew vegetables. Unlike my husband, I'm sort of an Air Force brat. My dad was raised on the farm, and annually he would save up all of his military leave and drive from California or wherever we were stationed. And we'd end up here in Spotsylvania County at my grandfather's farm, my dad's father's farm. And it always seemed like a magical place because it was the best food you could only imagine. And they were self-sufficient, just like my husband's family. We're both Army veterans. You can transition to the next slide. My husband retired after 24 years of service in the Army as a medical officer. I spent 8.5 years in the Army, and I served as a medical service corps officer, which was an administrative officer in hospitals. And I retired about 5 years ago after 34 years of federal service. Our farm is very small. It's only 10 acres. Half of the farm is forest land. And we only farm about 3 acres because it's just 2 of us. I have 1 part-time employee. So as you can imagine, farming 3 acres for 2 people basically is a lot of work. We grow a diverse operation. We like to say we grow everything from asparagus to zucchini. We also do cut flowers, we have fruits, and we're also beekeepers. And we just started beekeeping about 2 years ago. So we sell honey, and we also do value-added products. And I have a few that I can show you. We do soaps. I do lip balms, do salves and lotions. So there's a lot of things you can do on the farm. Our farm consists of 3 high tunnels, and you'll see them today. We have several fields, and then again, we have the small apiary. The next slide, please. Why would you want to grow garlic and onions? Well, growing these items is relatively easy. It's relatively inexpensive. When you grow the onions and garlic, they take up little space in the garden, and they require a little bit of maintenance. Under the right conditions, growing these items can be very productive. Growing garlic and onions will enhance your flavor when you're cooking. Most of you have done that. They taste awesome, and you can use them in so many dishes. Most importantly, garlic and onions are packed with nutrients, and we'll talk about that more in detail. And I think that's something we need to look at as the African American church. We need to look at how we're taking substances into our bodies. And lastly, you can make a little bit of money growing these items. I grow elephant garlic here on my farm, and those bulbs, just the seeds, grow for cost about $10 a piece. Next slide, please. Let's talk about growing garlic. The next slide, please. Okay, there it is. Let's give you a little background about garlic. It's one of the ancient vegetables. The ancient Egyptians used garlic as medicine and for flavoring foods. They also used it in the embalming process. History shows us that garlic has been cultivated in Mesopotamia for at least 4,000 years and several thousand years in China. There are over 600 varieties of garlic, and it's used all around the world. Currently, California is America's top producer of garlic. China, on the other hand, is the top producer worldwide. I looked yesterday on Amazon, and they're selling 2 pounds of garlic for $18.99. We're also going to talk about what attracts a farmer to growing garlic. Number one, it produces like rabbits. You take one garlic bulb, and here's an example of what a bulb of garlic. This is a small bulb of elephant garlic. When you break it open, it has 5 to 8 cloves. Each one of those cloves will produce another garlic plant. So with garlic, you can harvest 3 to 8 times the weight that you planted. Another important thing about growing garlic is that you don't have to worry about pests. Most bugs and animals don't mess with garlic. A lot of folks also don't like the smell. So, you know, we're in the middle of a pandemic. So if you eat some garlic, I think you're gonna increase the chances of distance between you and the next person. I love kimchi. My husband hates the smell of garlic because the garlic that most Koreans use to make garlic, it oozes out of the skin. So it's very powerful. Some of the health effects of garlic, and I'm going to read about 12 of them to you. It relieves cold symptoms. It can reduce hypertension. It can lower your cholesterol levels. It improves heart health. It has anti-inflammatory properties. It prevents heavy metal poisoning. It's a wound healer due to its antibacterial and antiviral properties. It improves bone health. It aids in digestion. It can regulate blood sugar. And I'm diabetic, so you know I'm going to use my garlic. It also helps to boost immunity, and it helps protect your vision. Raw garlic contains a lot of selenium, quercetin, and vitamin C, all of which are important nutrients for eye health. You may say that garlic is well admired and disliked, and it's very profitable to grow. According to the American Garlic Association, garlic is the second most used spice, only second to pepper. Right now, because of this COVID-19, the price of garlic is soaring because China's been widely affected because it's the world's largest producer. As far as ethnic communities, your Asian communities and Hispanic shoppers tend to be the most likely groups to buy garlic. Next slide, please. We're going to talk a little bit about the structure of garlic. It's not very complicated. And as I mentioned earlier, you're going to start with a small clove, and then you'll see shoots emerge. And then the third to last stages, that's what you're going to see on my farm. You're going to see it start to flower. Now, if you're going to grow garlic, I recommend that you think about the type that you're going to grow and base it on what you like. So I would advise you to sample different varieties to find out which one is most appealing to you. I said that I grow elephant garlic. It's not really a true garlic. It's more in the leek family. It has a milder flavor, and it doesn't have that sharp, pungent bite that's noted like in kimchi. There are two types of garlic. There's a hardneck garlic and a softneck garlic. The hardneck garlic is grown primarily in the colder temperatures, and that's something that we do here in Virginia. I would recommend for Virginia. Softneck garlic is the garlic that you're going to find in most supermarkets. It's got a milder flavor, and it's best for milder winters. Next slide. Let's talk about planting garlic and the conditions that you should use to plant your garlic in. The preferred soil, you can pretty much grow garlic in most soil types, but it needs to be a loose, well-drained soil. You need to have a pH of about 6 to 7 in order for your garlic to be successful. It loves a raised bed because that provides for good drainage, and it shouldn't be grown in stony conditions. A 10-10-10 fertilizer works great with garlic because nitrogen and potassium are the nutrients that are needed in the greatest quantities for both your onion and garlic crops. When you plant your garlic, you're going to plant it so that the root end is planted closest to the soil, well, in the soil, deepest in the soil, I should say, and the pointy end should point toward the sky. Then you just need to water, mulch, depending on the type of garlic, and keep it weeded. Garlic doesn't like competition from a lot of different weeds. Now let's talk a little bit about harvesting your garlic. Next slide, please. I don't think it's made it to the next.
Determine when to harvest.
Yes, okay, thank you. When you're harvesting garlic, the trickiest part is determining when it's ready. Timing is everything. Your best tip is to look at your planting instructions when you purchase your garlic, or do some research on the internet, and to look at the leaves for signs of yellowing. And when we go out to the farm, to the high tunnel where I've got my garlic growing, you'll see the signs that I'm speaking of. You want to remove mulch in the final weeks prior to harvesting. This will make your harvesting a lot easier. You want to stop watering your garlic about a week before because you don't want it to start rotting in its roots. Elephant garlic should be ready to pick when the leaves are bent over and dying back. And this is going to be about 90 days after planting. When half the leaves have died back, you're going to loosen the soil from around your bowl with a trowel and top off the scapes, which are the tops of the plant that have the bloom shoots out of. And this will direct more of the plant's energy into creating larger bulbs instead of working towards the flower. When you're storing your garlic on the next slide, it needs to be stored and cured for a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, so that this will enhance your flavor. You're going to knock off the dirt, as you can see on my garlic. This one, I kind of shook the dirt off, and you can see the roots are still there, and I took off the top of the scape. So once you do that, your garlic should be ready and to enhance some of your dishes. Now we're going to talk briefly about onions. Onions share a similar history like garlic. They were also grown in ancient Egypt more than 5,000 years ago, and in India and China. In Samaria, Most researchers agree that the onion has been cultivated for about 5,000 years. Onions were useful for sustaining life, and it could be used to prevent thirst, and dried and preserved later for consumption as food sources became scarce. Onions, like garlic, are indispensable for offering flavor to cooking. They also offer a diverse assortment of health benefits, boosting your immune system, regulating blood sugars, and keeping cholesterol under control. Farmers plant onions also because they're an inexpensive crop to plant. They're easy to grow, and they don't require a lot of space. They, like garlic, also repel insects and animals, so you don't have to worry about a lot of competition for your crops. Next slide, please. The anatomy of the onion is similar to that of garlic. And they also go through the similar stages, ending up with a flower bloom. Next slide. The neat thing about onions is that you can start planting onions in various life stages. You can either start it with the seed, grow onions from seedlings, or from dormant bulbs. And I'll talk a little bit about determining which one is best. Well, the advantages and disadvantages of planting either the seedlings, or the bulbs. I personally have planted the sets, which are the little bulbs. Next slide, please. When you're using the seeds, seeds offer you a wider variety of choices of onions because there are a lot of uncommon and heirloom varieties that you can choose from. The one thing about seeds is it's going to be the least expensive method of planting, but it's also going to take the longest as far as your days to harvest. The sets, or the bulbs, are what I've been using because they're dormant bulbs that have grown from seed from the previous season. Onions take about 2 years to grow if you're going to plant them from seeds, whereas if you buy some onion sets, it's going to take about a couple months. And they're also the best way to grow scallions. Seedlings are going to be your transplants. You're going to have a really quick turnaround with the seedlings, but it's also going to be your most costly method of growing onions. The next slide is going to show you how to be a good steward when you're planting your onions. And that's sort of like recycling what you've already purchased. A lot of us will buy scallions or green onions in the stores and put them in our dishes. You can cut off the root end and transplant that either into dirt or water and recycle your onions. They'll grow back just like celery. The next slide, we're going to talk about harvesting onions. When you grow your onions, you're going to harvest them once the bulbs have developed. For the full onions, your tops will become very soft and start falling over. You're going to stop watering also in the later stages to prevent root rot on your onions. And when the foliage has dried completely, you're going to clip the tops and cut off the roots. Next slide, please. Here are some resources on growing onions, and if you want the narrative, I can also send that to Michael and share that with you. What I'd like to do now is take any questions that you have, and then we'll take a walk through the farm so that you can see the actual garlic growing, as well as our onions. Do you see any questions yet, Michael?
Yes. Available.
Or if you want to shout them out orally.
One says, I place the root portion of my green onions in water. They're growing nicely. Should I keep them in water or plant them in soil?
My recommendation is to plant them in soil, because I don't feel like the nutrients are absent in the water. And then the chances of you getting mold or bacteria growth in your water, because you should change the water regularly if that's the method you're going to use.
Should you dedicate an onion or garlic area, or can soil be used for another vegetable later?
Repeat that question, please.
Should you dedicate an onion or garlic area, or can soil be used for another vegetable later, I guess in that same plot? Should you rotate?
I recommend that you rotate your vegetables and not grow the same thing in the same location over and over again. Number one, even though onions are not pest prone or garlic's not pest prone, you deplete the nutrients quickly. I mean, you could add compost to that area to regenerate the soil, but I recommend that you rotate. The other thing about onions and garlic, they don't take a lot of space, so that if you have a plot that has tomatoes growing in it, you can just put your onion and garlic in the corners of your plots or around your tomatoes or your corn or whatever. Another thing for integrated pest management, because onions and garlic repel a lot of insects, you might want to mix your plantings with your onions, so that you might have kale and onions growing together. I have my bok choy and onions growing together. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any more questions. Do you, Michael?
Okay, already up there. So
okay, we're going to take a farm walk. So if you would take a few minutes and let us get ourselves together, and we're going to take a walk through the farm.
Is it in there?
I'm sorry?
Would it in that care there?
I'm not sure.
Okay, no problem. All right, we're about to walk to the farm. So just give us a couple minutes.
And if you have any questions while we're walking, please unmute yourselves.
So there actually is a question. How do we regrow onions from a mature onion?
Our farm is located right next to I-95 and Route 1 at an intersection, so you'll hear a lot of traffic.
Michael Carter, could y'all hear the question?
We didn't hear the question. Hold on. Ask it again, please.
How do you regrow onions from a mature onion cut in half?
If you're growing an onion, it's best you're going to have to peel back the layers until you form something that looks like a bulb from the inside, and you want to keep your root portion intact. I just find it a whole lot easier to just buy onion sets than go through all that. But I mean, if you have a lot of time, you can do that. but it's a lot of work. I've seen it grown if you slice it in half and keep the roots together, that you can put it in water or soil and regrow an onion that way. We're passing the bok choy. What you're seeing on top of the bok choy is some necros, some dead tissue, because the high tunnel got too hot. A week before last, it was about 130 degrees in the high tunnel. Here is my bed of bok choy and onions that I grew from sets. And I'll pull one up so that you can see what it's going to look like at this stage. So this is sort of like a salad onion that you would use in your cooking, and then the scapes you can also use for seasoning. And I planted those about, I'd say about a month ago, but as you can see, they haven't fallen over yet, so this one is pretty immature, but you can still use it in your cooking. Okay. And now we'll walk over to the other high tunnel that has the garlic in it. And here's some more onions that I planted. And I planted these about, I guess, 3 weeks after I planted the first set that you saw. Here are my tomatoes, some of my tomatoes. And here's another one of our fields. And we're headed over to the garlic high tunnel. As I mentioned earlier, I also do cut flowers, so I do have flowers interspersed with my garlic. And I don't know if you can see, but my garlic has started to flower on the top. And as you can see here, this is a pretty thick stalk of elephant garlic. And let me get my shovel. I'm going to remove one of the bulbs of the elephant garlic. Okay. First, you're going to want to loosen some of the soil around the bulb. This is a shovel from my Army days. This is called an entrenching tool.
Sheesh.
And you can see how rich the soil is. We use mushroom compost. And if you can see here, but the bulb is about the size of a softball. And right here are the garlic seeds. And if I plant this, the following year, I'm going to get a garlic plant that's about this size. So it takes a couple years for the garlic to grow from seeds. That's why it's easier for you to plant your garlic from the bulbs. Or the, yeah. And that's why I was saying that garlic is very prolific. So you're going to want to keep your little seedlings. And all of this will become garlic, or this might have been one from the previous year. Any questions?
So do you dry them out and how?
Yes, you're going to dry your garlic on shelves. Have something here, stack a shelf, put it in the garage, and you're going to cure it for about a week or about 2 to 3 weeks. Any more questions?
Any more questions?
There's a question from Emily. Is it too hot at this point to plant onion from sets, or can I plant onions now? I'm in Maryland and we got into the 80s and humid weather.
I think you can still plant your onions now. If you look in most yards, you're going to find wild onions, which are a form of garlic. I had a pole we took off with the vehicle that I had pulled up. I was trying to look. We cut grass yesterday, so most of my onions are gone. Oh, here's one over here. I would go ahead and plant them. And look at the planting instructions. I don't think 80 degrees is going to hurt your onions because you find them growing all over the fields here. And like I said, if I hadn't cut grass yesterday, you'd see onions just over here in the blackberry. Here's some wild onions. And you can tell by the bloom on the scape. And even though they're wild, they're still edible. And I have them growing. We like to say that we think in our farm's history that it probably might have been an onion farm previously because we have onions growing everywhere. Any other questions?
Can the leaves be consumed?
The leaves, I wouldn't consume the leaves. Well, the leaves on the garlic, yes, you can consume them too. But I would only consume the green ones. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't try to do anything with the brown and the yellow. Because I think it would be like your onion peel, the onion paper. It's going to be very dry and paper tasty.
Can I put my wild onions in a pot to grow?
You can. But I don't think your bulb is going to be, you might get something twice the size of this.
Any other questions?
Ms. Roberson, can you speak briefly about saving the seeds of onions?
The seeds, like I showed you with the garlic, the seeds of onions, this is my first year growing onions, so I really can't tell you a whole lot about saving the seeds. Um, I believe you would get them from the flower. Once the flower dries up, that I would shake them out and put them on a napkin or paper towel and let them cure for maybe a week or so. Keep them out in the sun, but in a cool, dry place that is protected from a lot of moisture. But I would also look it up on the internet just to make sure, because like I said, I've never done it before. I'm just going by what I would do with regular flowers and other, blooming plants. Because I hate for you to go through the whole process and put them in the ground and you're waiting for a couple of months and nothing happens.
So there are two more questions. The first question is, can we put the scallions directly in soil?
The scallions directly in soil? Yes.
And there is one more question from Emily, who is admiring your farm and your 10 acres of land. And her question is, how did you get all of that land, and what recommendations do you have for farmers who are interested in buying land?
What I did was, this particular property used to belong to my aunt. And she sold it to me about 35 years ago when we first went into the military. She had retired and built the house. Actually, there's a house over here. Originally, she lived in this house. And she sold me 5 acres in this house originally. And she gave me a really good deal. And she told me that if I wanted it, if I paid her $10,000, then the house was mine and the land. And of course, what did I do? I said yes. I saved my money. I'm a good steward. My husband says a cheapskate. I shop at Goodwill. I buy used items for the farm. I try to recycle quite a bit. So we cook a lot of our own meals so that we're able to do that. And as far as seeds, I save my own seeds a lot of times and do a lot of the work on the farm ourselves. So you can do it. And getting back to the other 5 acres, my aunt is still alive. She's 97 years old. And she was living in the house, the second house. And because of her arthritis and her age, she felt like the other 5 acres in the other house were getting to be too much. So she sold me the other house. And at that time, she didn't give me quite the deal she gave me with the first. She told me that if I paid her $150,000 and took over the payments, because she had this house built, then that was mine. So my husband and I doubled up on our savings and bought the other 5 acres in the house. And that took us, I guess, maybe 10 years to buy. So that's how we got the 10 acres and the 2 houses and the farm. For those of you that are looking for property, one way to get property is to go to, not estate sales, but go to your tax office, because a lot of people are losing their land because they don't pay the taxes. And they will auction off the land that way. And I purchased land that way. We still have our original family farm that my grandfather had when I was growing up, that caused me to fall in love with farming. And we actually added to that through a tax sale auction in Spotsylvania County. So that would be my recommendation. And of course, already have your financing available, because they're going to want 10% down even to bid on the auction. That's the way it is in Spotsylvania County. Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Everybody said thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome. Come here, Rob. Here's the other half of our farm, Thomas, Rob. And I also want to add, I know the pastor had on Virginia Union University t-shirt. I am a Virginia Union graduate, undergraduate, and I was happy to see that. Go Panthers!
I knew there was something special about y'all.
Cool. Any more questions?
Yes. Are there younger members of the family that are farming with you or supporting the farming in other ways?
Were there younger members in the community just supporting you or learning from you?
Yes, we have members of our church that we hire periodically, especially when the tomatoes and string beans and that kind of thing come in. I belong to a jail ministry, and our part-time employee was recently released. He's doing a fantastic job. So we try to have our community be a part of our farm. This year we received a grant where we're going to be providing food to the food bank. We're hoping to provide 12,000 pounds of food, produce, to the local food bank. So we're deeply involved in our community.
What about younger members of your family?
Younger members of my family, they do come out. They will come and pick with our strawberry patches over there. They love our strawberries, so they'll come out for Strawberry Day and to have fun. We did have a son. He passed last year that was an integral part of our farm. So he was deeply involved in our farm. He wrote our farm business plan. He had a bachelor's degree in business management. So he helped us out quite a bit. He helped set up a lot of the irrigation systems.
Just about everything.
Just about everything.
Any other questions?
There's a lot of pastors and religious leaders watching right now. Could you give us some suggestions as to what our churches and faith-based organizations could do to better support you and other farmers in this season?
Well, I know in our church, eating is a big part of our fellowship experience. I think we need to get away from a lot of that fried chicken, macaroni and cheese. I think we need to look at healthy eating. Instead of having pound cake, have blackberries, have strawberries. Do something that's more natural and more wholesome and nutritious for the body. You know, when we start thinking about what we do to maintain health in America, a lot of it comes from the pharmacy, when it ought to be coming from the FARMC. So just thinking about our food choices and taking care of our temples the right way, the way our grandparents did. Any questions?
I think that might be.
And then also supporting your Black farmers. I think a lot of times people will go to Aldi and Lidl and Safeway and all these supermarkets. A lot of your produce is coming from South America. South America doesn't have the rules that we have when it comes to pesticides. You don't know what's been sprayed on those things that you're consuming. You know, the Black farmer's got to charge a little bit more. You know, just because you can get strawberries for 99 cents at Aldi, are they healthy? You You know, you're talking about strawberries that have come from Mexico and, you know, other countries that don't have any stringent rules when it comes to pesticide safety. On our farm, we don't use any pesticides or herbicides. So you're talking about, we try to grow as organically as possible, or naturally as possible. We're not organic certified, but we use organic and sustainable principles.
Awesome. Well, we are just so thankful. This has been amazing. And to have the both of you on the screen on your farm with nearly 50 people from around the country there with you virtually, it just makes my heart so glad. We want to support you. What is the best ways that we can support you and support your farm?
Well, if you would contribute to Virginia State University, we're part of the Small Farm Outreach Program. We serve as mentors to other aspiring farmers. If you would donate to their scholarship program, I mean, that would just make our heart glad, so that we can bring up the next generation of farmers. And if there's anything that we can do to help you all in the future, if we can provide information, if you want to come out here once the pandemic requirements are lifted, we'd be glad to show you and share with you anything that we can.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we want to give y'all some money too. Praise the Lord. So,
going to give y'all some money too.
No. We plant the seed, God does all the rest. Give it to God.
Amen, amen. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you. Oh, we do have a question. Do you ship honey?
I'm sorry?
Do you ship honey?
We started this week. We shipped some to...
So what's your website?
Our website is Botanical Bites and Provisions, LLC at gmail.com.
Website.
.com.
Okay.
That was our email address.
Botanical Bites and Provisions, LLC.
And A&D Provisions, LLC
Mm-hmm.
.com.
Mm-hmm. They can order products from your site or email you?
We're working on that. But if you call us or contact us by email, we'll be glad to work with you on that. Or by phone.
And the phone number is 540-287-5734.